Hello, dear listeners. My name is Danny Johnson, most famously known as the... Would you stop? Why are you just staring at me and mumbling?
Well, there's a number of reasons, actually. First and foremost, I was whispering an apotropaic spell that shall grant me protection against all coming evil.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, I must forewarn you, Dark One, that I am being very serious.
Really? Oh, woeful me then. Whatever shall this coming evil do against your protection?
Right, I forgot. Everyone in this place is unbelievably horny for some reason.
You're the one role-playing here.
I'm the role player? Look at your outfit.
Bitch!
Anyhow, mock me all you want, thou sultrous fiend, for you are yet to witness the true scope of my powers. You shall see in time.
I sure am shivering now. Anyway, we got off track. Dear listeners, I am your host, Danny Johnson, otherwise known as the magnificent marauder of mayhem, the Roseville Ripper, the Ghostface.
Woo! Bravo! Bravo!
Why, thank you. The survivor that will join us today is Michaela Reed, a young mystic of the fog, and the first survivor who actually shows some due respect to my titles.
Yeah, that's another reason why I didn't interrupt you. You never managed to give your full introduction during any of the other interviews.
Oh, you've been listening to them?
Yep. Jonah helped me get my hands on a radio, and I used it to binge all of your interviews. Not gonna lie, I'm kind of a stan.
A working radio? In the entity's realm? You better not be lying to try and flatter me, Michaela. I can live with revulsion, but fake admiration?
No, really, I'm not just saying that because I'm at your mercy. I really have been listening to your interviews, and if I ignore all the kidnapping and torturing, I genuinely like how you go out of your way to delve into everyone's aura with each one. It gives me a chance to get to know the survivors who would normally keep themselves away from me.
It's about time someone recognized the merits of my prowess. You see, Michaela, I don't just delve into the survivors. I carve into their inner beings to expose their meatiest, juiciest contents on my show.
Bravissimo, Danny. That's some impressive visceral imagery. Ooh. Could I steal that for a story I'm writing?
What kind of story?
Long, long ago, in the realm of darkness and death, two starstruck lovers met at the Blood Lodge.
You know what? I don't really want to know. We're here for an interview, Michaela, not story time. So, on that note, why don't we just go ahead and get started?
Excellent. And again, I'm just super happy to be able to collaborate with you, Danny. Let us craft a tale of intrigue and squalor for...
Alrighty then. I assume you know the drill, superfan. Start with Dwight Fairfield.
Well, Dwight's a really sweet guy, usually. A little too sweet to order people around in a place like this, in my opinion, but at least he tries his best to lead. I mean, it's not really his fault that he struggles with being assertive. He's a Pisces, after all.
There are many reasons why Mr. Fairfield is a fucking sub, but I wouldn't link any of them to a random date he was born in.
And that would be a typical Gemini remark. I'm not even a cosmic witch, but you would be surprised by all the things you could learn about a person based on their sun sign.
How did you know that
Your mood and attitude have been a roller coaster during each interview you've made. One moment you're laughing along with the survivor, the next you're also threatening to stab them. Same with your parents. You wanted them to praise you, but you also wanted them to die by your...
You were saying?
All I'm saying is that there's duality to your character, Danny. Any witch who set foot in the astrology field would assure you that's a telltale Gemini attribute.
As intriguing as my past can be, Michaela, I am not the subject of this interview. I suggest you don't forget that.
Very well. I'll take that into account when we move over to Meg. Now sheath thy blade, fiend, lest I remind you that a powerful spell wards me of your insidious strikes.
Why the hell would I run Insidious?
That's not what I...
Proceed with Meg Thomas.
As the only gingers in this place, I like to think Meg and I share a special connection. But, she calls bullshit on that. She calls bullshit on most of what I say, actually.
How do you know I'm not a ginger under this mask?
If you were, I would have sensed it already. Ooh.
And yet again, a survivor has me agreeing with Meg.
She can diss me all she wants. At the end of the day, she respects my boon totems just like everyone else. Sprint Burst and Shadow Step are quite the pair. If only she would acknowledge my value instead of, well, calling me whatever slur pops into her head at the time.
Once again, Meg is probably justified. But let's move on to Claudette Morrill.
Not only was she kind to me from the moment I first met her, but her knowledge on botany and my area of witchcraft go hand in hand.
For the sake of context, and only context because I couldn't care less about the topic, what would that area of witchcraft be?
I'm glad you asked. Though my proficiencies are not limited by namesake alone, I may doth be known as somewhat of a green witch. I'm in tune with the forces of nature, which grant me the providence through means of herbal spells and the readings of coffee beans.
You read coffee beans.
And bless them too, yes. It is a common practice of both green and kitchen witches.
So you're just as obsessed with plants as Claudette is, except you're also delusional about their properties.
What? I am not delusional in the slightest. I have actual, legitimate magic. Most people do, actually. They just haven't manifested it. Not to sound arrogant, but I developed the concept of boons, and trademarked them too. If I really have no power, then what exactly do you think makes my circle of healing work?
Probably the entity allowing it because she has a thing for making life impossible for killers.
But
I'm sorry you think you're more powerful and important than you actually are. You're probably a huge narcissist, too. I really hope one day you get past your theatrics and delusions of grandeur. But for now, I just want to know your opinions on Jake Park.
You know, usually lack of self-awareness is a Taurus trait, but...
Jake Park. Now.
Well, the interview you did with him is one of my favorites, as fruitless as your attempts to teach him your ways were. But in all honesty, your interactions with Jake are all I got of him. I don't think he's ever spoken directly to me. As smart as he is, he's surprisingly superstitious. Such can be the effect of witchcraft on a mind that sees only the mundane.
Or maybe you just make him cringe.
Takes one to know one, Danny.
That's not how you... That phrase doesn't even make sense. Whatever. We're moving on to...
We did not talk about
Oh no! How could that be? Is there really nothing you could say about...
We do not talk about I always looked forward to saying those lines, not gonna lie. By the way, you should really try capturing She Who Shall Not Be Named already.
Every time I try to kidnap her, she gets snatched up by the entity and placed into another trial. Every single time. Without fail. It's really annoying.
A series of coincidences, maybe. Or perhaps something darker is responsible.
Something tells me you are a hoot at parties.
Oh, I never really got invited to those.
Oh, I know. It's all over your aura.
I was really lonely as a kid. Especially after my dad died.
So, thoughts on Laurie Strode?
The weight of a great tragedy hangs from her shoulders, akin to the cape of a forlorn king, and yet she shan't remove it until she has avenged her people, whose friends who are lost to the evil in flesh.
English, please.
Oh, Laurie? I don't really know much about her, except that she's always on high alert for Michael Myers. Yep, that's pretty much it. Her energy is constantly blood orange.
Alright. Talk about Ace Visconti then.
Well, there's what he told you about me during his interview. How he couldn't manifest his desires into any kind of boon, because he has no honest desires. As sleazy and creepy as that man can be, I can't help but pity his heart for being so lost. So empty and devoid of any passion that ascended beyond wealth or the fleeting pleasure of intimacy.
Perhaps I could remind him of his desire to stay alive. Before taking his life away, that is.
Good luck, because you're gonna need tons of it if you actually want to get him this time.
I don't need luck when I have years of training. Much like our next survivor, Bill Overbeck.
Right, Bill. I respect how far he's willing to go to save a life. Although, what I like most about him are his stories.
His stories?
Yeah. Sometimes all of us just sit around the campfire to hear Bill tell anecdotes of his days in Vietnam and the battles he fought against hordes of zombies. I know the war veteran storyteller is usually a tad cliche, but hey, he actually makes even his most harrowing experiences sound exciting. That's one hell of a merit when your audience is composed of people who get maimed and butchered on a regular basis.
In that case, I have a generous amount of stories I can share with you about my many nights out as the legendary Ghostface.
Oh, you would have loved open mic night at the Moonstone.
I like my audiences a bit more captive. Now, tell me about Fang Min.
I'm not on the best terms with her. Then again, almost no one is. She's always demanding perfection from everyone on the team, as if we aren't all just normal people under extreme circumstances, and that gives her a bad rep, as you'd imagine. Teaching her how to bless totems was especially grueling. Somehow, she managed to think of ways to correct me at the kind of stuff I've been doing for years. And what's worse about all of this is that I can't tell if she's a Leo or a Virgo.
Survivors like her will accuse me of tunneling and not playing the game right, as if pursuing one person to death wasn't how being a murderer works in real life.
I'm pretty sure we're talking about vastly different situations.
Wouldn't Fang qualify as an entitled survivor in both, though?
Yeah, she would actually. Point taken.
You know, if you weren't so mentally ill, I would say I somewhat respect you.
Thank you? But again, I'm not a mental patient. I'm actually magical.
Let's move on to someone I do not respect. David King.
He's a tough guy with a soft heart. Basically the good giant trope. And I'll admit, his physique is very impressive. I get why so many ladies, and a surprising amount of the guys, are thirsting over him.
Oh, and you aren't?
Not really, he's, not my type.
Then what would your type be, then?
Well, I'm not really comfortable with viewing people in that way. Like, viewing them as someone I could potentially have sex with.
Naked human bodies can be quite beautiful from both an artistic and sexual standpoint. Especially if they're covered in stab wounds.
Oh no, disregarding the murder of it all, I've seen quite a few naked bodies up close and personal.
Oh?
Well, you see, in Wiccan tradition, there are practices where the casters are required to be fully naked, so the energy in their clothes doesn't get in the way of their connection with nature. Although the witchcraft that I perform isn't exactly the same as the Wiccan type, I agree with their beliefs that the exposure of our bodies and the sexual act are ways to attune ourselves to the magic in the earth, rather than the result of mere pleasure-seeking. So yeah, that kind of perspective kind of makes one look past any carnal desire that someone's genitals might awaken.
Isn't there a word for that feeling? Isn't it like asexual? Are you an asexual, Michaela?
I don't think labels like asexual or green witch or even survivor are all that helpful, since they can't fully encompass my experience. But, I guess maybe I am somewhere on the spectrum of asexuality, sure. Not that I'm, completely allergic to the idea of sex, or... not that it even matters. It's not...
Oh? Hast the witch lost thine articulate vernacular?
Sex and sexuality are just... not very comfortable topics for me, Danny. Which is especially hard to grapple with since so many people are having sex in the entity's realm, apparently. So many. You would think the blood and gore would stop people from being so aroused all the time, but no. Sometimes it feels like I'm living in someone's smutty fanfiction. Answer me this, Ghostface. Do you have a higher body count on bodies you've slain, or the bodies that you've slain?
I think it's better if I don't answer that question. Instead, why don't we move over to Quentin Smith?
I'd say that Quentin knows a solid repertoire of demons and eldritch monsters from every religion and mythology you could think of. It's pretty fascinating to talk to him about that stuff, as long as he can hold a conversation for longer than 5 minutes before dozing off.
You know, I've been known as somewhat of a demon myself.
Yeah, I've noticed that sometimes you wear a devil mask during trials. In all honesty, red looks pretty good on you. And since it's the color of passion, well, it fits with all the flair and care that you put into your murders.
I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're very right, Michaela.
Though wearing a lot of red would also imply that you feel sexually invigorated when you kill people, so...
I'll spare you the details since you probably wouldn't like them. But in essence, I guess I just can't help it. Stabbing someone is a very intimate activity, Miss Reed. You become close to that person in many ways more than just physical. There's the anticipation, the adrenaline, and then the absolute surge of power at contact and... what my body does in response to all that stimulation, well, like I said, I just can't help it. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, David Tapp. Michaela.
A man taken over by his obsession. One who would run straight through any warning clouds, wounded allies, and crying widows on his path to what he foresaw as true justice. But aside from that, he's really competent at what he does. From what I heard, when Steve got here, he was looking for his friend Nancy, and Tapp was the one who managed to find her. I've been asking him to do the same with my best friend, who disappeared from the real world before I got here. But so far, Tapp ran into no trace or clues. By the way, Ghostface, you didn't happen to kill any Julians recently, have you?
I don't think so. But then again, after so many different victims, their names become a blur.
Well, in that case, if you're listening to this, Julian, I am sorry you ended up in this place because of me. I'm going to find you. I promise.
Aw, how hopelessly optimistic. Reminds me of one Kate Denson.
Kate. There's something very, very special about her. She radiates an aura of light that shines through the darkness of the fog, battling the endless dread with endless hope. Much like her guitar, she's always in tune with nature, so much that I feel as though my magic becomes stronger in her presence. Our energies feel perfectly aligned.
Like I told Kate during her interview, you two should really date each other.
Oh, hers was the only interview I chose to skip. I didn't want to,
To know what she thinks of you, perhaps.
Don't get me wrong, Kate is amazing, but she's also, very sexually active. If we were to date, she'd probably be disappointed by how differently I view intercourse.
I would say give Kate's interview a listen. What she says about a lot of things might interest you.
Huh. Thank you, I guess? Wait, do you, ship us or something?
Next on our list is Adam Francis.
Oh, he's cool. We've been snatching books from the Eyrie of Crows and police station libraries to read in between trials while we talk about our favorite authors. He's a Hemingway and Helen Keller kind of guy, while I'm more into Poe and H.P. Lovecraft.
Overrated. Try Shakespeare, Moliere, masters of dialogue who, much like me, could entertain and captivate thousands with their characters alone.
Come to think of it, you do give off a closeted theater kid vibe.
Not so closeted anymore, mind you. Another benefit of being in the entity's realm is the freedom to be the Ghostface without having to remove my mask and seem like an everyday kind of man.
You feel more authentic to yourself whenever you put on a mask, rather than the other way around. It's an interesting subversion for sure.
I never thought of it that way. I guess you have a point, but this interview isn't about me, okay? Let's talk about Jeff Johansson.
Another good subversion. A big, gruff, heavy metal loving man who's simultaneously one of the most chill people you could ever meet. I'm not as close to him as Claude's is, but when I do end up hanging out with him, he's nice to talk to, even if he can be a bit quiet at first.
If you heard him grunting in pain, you wouldn't think he's so quiet. Let's move on to Jane Romero.
I admire her determination. Manifesting your energy to make a boon is one of the harder teachables to learn for sure. But Jane persisted so much that she ended up being the first survivor to learn how to light Shadow Step up all by herself.
Ugh, Shadow Step. A cheap shortcut to what masterfully executed stealth tactics can achieve.
Not sure how stealthy you really are if we can all review you just by looking in your general direction.
Don't push your luck. I still have a knife.
I will consider your mercy a boon.
Yawn.
At least I tried. The next survivor was Ash, right?
Correct.
Brewing with so much bravado and manliness, you'd think he's more a caricature than a man. But hey, that can steal a chuckle out of me. Now, in terms of his stories, holy 9 circles of hell are his stories beyond amazing! Being trapped in the Middle Ages to fight demons that haunted humanity across time and space, that's enough material for an endless stream of novels.
Sounds to me like he's making those stories up so he can be liked by gullible survivors like you.
Don't be so sure of that, Danny. As a storyteller, I can safely differentiate fiction from a real, heartfelt, in the flesh, I was actually there to experience it kind of tale.
Says she who's lost in her fantasy of being a witch.
Hate to sound like a broken record, but I am magical. My boons alone should...
Speaking of boons and totems, the next survivor is Nancy Wheeler. I heard you two have some sort of rivalry.
Well, Nancy is... She is in no way dumb or a bad person, and she's shown to me many times that she's perfectly capable of working well with every survivor she's teamed up with.
You are trying so hard to be nice, aren't you?
That being said...
Called it.
I cannot understand why, in the ever-mystical fuck, she insists on cleansing totems when she knows that I'm trying to bless them.
Oh, spill tea, girlfriend. Yes.
I get that Nancy has a perk that lets her heal up after cleansing a totem. But you know what? So do I! My circle of healing doesn't destroy hexes. It also applies to every survivor near it, not just me. Sure, this killer can snuff the boon out, but guess what? I can just light it up again as many times as I want. Nancy can only use her perk a maximum of 5 times unless the killer happens to run Pentimento, which I can also counter by not cleansing the totems!
I am living for this rivalry, really and truly. I want to pop some popcorn with Ji-Woon, give you guys knives, and see what happens.
It's not all that bad. I mean, as long as neither of us bring up the topic of totems, Nancy and I can coexist, I guess.
I see. Do you coexist with Steve Harrington as well?
Yep. You know, for him being somewhat of a meathead jock, I was surprised he knew so much about nerd culture. He and Nancy called the monster that came with them a Demogorgon, which means they must know a lot about Dungeons and Dragons. Steve strikes me as a white knight for sure.
Dungeons and Dragons. That was all the rage for a subsect of us back in high school. We had a campaign in my theater group.
Huh, no way. Were you a player or a dungeon master?
Player. Though I later learned that I love controlling the narrative more than just being a pawn in it. See, my original character, Craven, was a thief who would go from tavern to tavern telling stories based on his own murders, committing a new one each time before heading off to the next town.
Sounds eerily familiar. Since you gave him the thief class, I'm assuming you played the game on its first few editions. Around the late 70s, right?
Mid-80s. Either way, I was eventually kicked out when I enacted my plan to kill everyone's characters. Now that's a way to end a campaign. I rolled a nat 20 and the look on their faces was well worth the meticulous planning it took to get there.
Yeah, that sounds like the kind of thing you do. But to be fair, D&D is all about freedom of play, so I guess to each their own?
Finally, someone who gets it. But moving on, next is Yui Kimura.
Oh, an awesome gal. Someone I really look up to. I mean, sure, she's physically strong, but I've read her tea leaves and that woman is spiritually strong as well. I just wish she would open up a little more, emotionally. From what I've sensed in her aura, she has the toxically masculine habit of not being super open about how she feels. She bottles up her rage at the moment. Maybe not as rageful as the spirit, but still.
Alright, what about Zarina Kassir? I hear she...
Whether she shall defeat you or perish by thy hand, I cannot tell. But know that it shall be a close victory, defined by an even closer roll of wit.
Seriously, what the fuck is going on with you?
Well, apart from being tied up, which, by the way, wasn't even necessary if you just wanted to talk to me, I've got nothing going on for myself right now. Anyways, who's next?
No, don't bullshit me. You're obviously up to something, and I'm not moving on to the next survivor until you explain.
Cheryl Mason. Even before she reached this foul place, A dark mist had followed her every step she's taken in every life she's lived, engulfing everyone around her in insurmountable suffering, and marking her for...
Shut up! Why the fuck do you keep talking like that?
Should you not act wearily, you shall bear witness what can be achieved through such duality, Gemini.
Alright, I get it. You're just trying to fuck with me.
Sure. Tee.
Since we're not too far from the end of this interview, I'll just indulge your little fantasy. Then, once we're done, you shall bear witness to what can be achieved with a common hunting knife. Talk about Felix Richter with haste.
He's an honest, hardworking guy. Pretty shy as well. I've only seen him being comfortable when he's around Elodie and Serena, so he follows them around a lot, except when those two head off on their own.
It's a shame how he would waste those dashing looks of his. A piece of hot German sausage. Bratwurst.
Is that a callback to episode 1, or are you just running out of material?
Wait, did I already say... Look, my voice actor was completely different then.
I get writer's block too sometimes, so I get that it can be hard to.
Shut up! My point still stands. Now talk about Elodie Ricoto.
She's perhaps the only survivor who actually takes my knowledge of the occult very seriously. She's often asking me questions about ancient secret societies and Wiccan groups, and trying to see if they can be connected to a cult called the Black Veil. The name is unfamiliar to me, but I still provide Elodie with all the info I can get, because her desire to understand this place and get us out of here through a thorough investigation sure is contagious. And it makes her a dynamic character, narratively speaking.
She'll have to do much more than just investigate if she actually wants to stand a chance against the entity itself.
Forget not that faith is the first step towards salvation, fiend.
What's one step when you're an ocean's length away from your goal? Oh, and speaking of unreachable goals, next is Yoon Jin Lee.
I don't know about that, actually. No goal seems to be too high for that woman to reach. I mean, she was the one to coax you, of all killers, into doing what she wanted, in exchange for nothing.
Hey, you survivors cooperate with me, not the other way around. And besides, it's not like I got nothing out of it.
Wait, did you actually get the keychain?
As chaotic evil as Yoon Jin is, she does keep her word. Now, if only her actor would pay me.
So, did he actually spit on the keychain, or?
Oh, he did way more than just that.
So, Jill, Valentine, and Leon Scott are usually next, aren't they? Their stories share many similarities with Bill's zombies anecdotes, but they keep insisting that the infection will spread all over Raccoon City, and it was entirely different from the one that crumbled Bill's world into shambles. I know Elodie has this theory that we all come from different universes, not all the same planet, so I guess Jill, Leon, and Bill validate that theory.
I wouldn't put it past the entity to reach into multiple layers of reality to find the most succulent prey, or the most acute predators. But I'm sure that out of all the Ghostfaces in the universe, I'm the most lethal.
Did you just refer to yourself as a predator? Like, can we circle back to that?
Let's continue with Jonah Vasquez.
He's a guy who lives by logic. You'd think that it'd make it hard for us to get along, but actually, I love debating with him. It's fun to try and see where each of us considers known science to end, and thus give way to the unexplainable powers of magic. Lately, though, the line has begun to vanish, as we've realized that the two sides are more intertwined than we first thought. I mean, I think that's part of the reason why he and I are able to find your interviews and listen to them. I was walking on Haddonfield's Main Street when I suddenly began hearing Yoonjin's voice, which was weird since I knew she wasn't in the trial. Turns out that the sound was being transmitted from the radio of a police car. I tried getting inside, but all the doors were locked. At one point, Jonah came by and asked me what I was doing, so I told him about the radio and asked for his help. Without a second thought, he opened his toolbox, and within a minute, he was using all kinds of tools to pry one of the doors open and remove the whole radio set from the car. Then Jonah spent the next few minutes tinkering with it like no one's business. I mean, really, he looked so focused. That level of manifestation almost rivals my own, if he'd ever call it that.
Wait, all that time wasted and you two still made it out alive?
The killer was a basement bubba, so we didn't have to worry about time. Anyways, the radio stopped working after we escaped, But Jonah and I kept at it for a while until it suddenly began transmitting the interview you made with Dwight, then the one with Meg, and so on until it got to Yoon Jin and began looping back around. After we're done, I assume my interview is going to join that cycle.
Hold on. Does anybody else know that my interviews are being transmitted somehow?
I mean, I'm sure Dwight and Kate and Cheryl have told people that you've kidnapped them, but Zarina was the only one to show a serious amount of interest in their testimony. So much that she asked me about it, and then I showed her the radio. So, to the best of my knowledge, no one has been listening so far besides me, Jonah, Zarina, and the entity, I guess. Which begs the question of, why are you doing this in the first place? Like, if no one can actually hear you and there are truly no dear listeners, then why are you actually—
I know a man who tried comprehending the inner workings of the entity and the killers that work within it. His name is Alien. He grows more insane with each new discovery he makes. He's about to reach his tipping point and finally beg to die. I wouldn't go searching for the answers to all your questions. You won't like what you'll find.
I guess trying to process all of this by yourself would drive anyone to madness. That's why I'm glad I got Jonah, at least.
Alright, whatever. Your funeral. Oh, hey, speaking of delusional people in way over their heads, the next to last survivor is Yuichi Asakawa.
I took a liking to him the moment I realized he was a psychic. He never told anyone that, of course, but I sensed it when I was performing some palmistry around the campfire. The energy I got from him was unlike anything I had ever seen. He only told me a little bit about his powers after that, and so far, I'm the only one who he has successfully taught his boon perk to.
I've got to start keeping track of you boon creators and save a mori for each of you.
We're called boonfluencers, actually.
That is fucking terrible.
Boon leave it or not,
No.
we're a force to boon reckoned with.
That one didn't even make sense.
What's wrong, Danny? Are you gonna boon me?
Michaela.
Booning your mom. Heyo! Okay, I get it.
The final survivor for today is Hattie Kerr.
Oh, if you think I'm happy to have met someone like Yoichi in here, just imagine how ecstatic I got when that woman walked into the campfire. My friend Julian and I actually used to be obsessed with her web series, Harbinger FM, back in the real world. Although, I think she called herself Hannah back then.
Interesting. What was that series about?
It's pretty hard to explain, but basically, she and her brother explored places where great tragedies had taken place, either leading to or caused by the Ravage, a mosaic of human suffering that was slowly filling corners of the world with all kinds of cosmic monsters. Hattie, had the ability to see into that Ravage and pull different objects and creatures from it.
Huh. Sounds to me like she peered too far behind the entity's curtains.
Yeah, it's a real shame. Although, I'm glad to finally meet her. She's a little closed off right now, but eventually I'll try to discuss some theories I had formed about the Ravage with her. Should be fun.
Speaking of fun, we've reached the moment that everyone's been waiting for. I can finally fucking kill you.
Hey! I don't think everyone has been waiting for this moment. It's not like everyone hates me for no reason, right? Right? Wait, am I unpopular in the fandom or something? I don't get why—
Well, it's time to say goodbye to the cringy, pathetic excuse you have for a life.
Well, that's rude. I thought we were becoming, like, friends or something.
You are and always will be my victim, Michaela. Plain and simple.
I know narcissists lie a lot, but really, Danny? Despite all we have in common, despite how much we understand each other, despite how much I tried, you can really look me in the eyes and say you still feel that way about me?
Some characters never change. They stay static. That's like storytelling 101. Now shut the fuck up and die.
Well, as glad as I am to have participated, I'm afraid you won't be able to give this interview the conclusion you so desire, Danny.
And why is that?
Why not stab me and find out?
Odd request, but my knife was going to see its way into your chest anyways, so I'll oblige nonetheless. I'll see you in the fog. What the?
As such, it seems that the fiend has been bested yet again.
How in the fuck did you do that?
The answer is simple.
My spell granted me such providence.
What?
Hath thou forgotten the magic that warded this witch from evil? Hath thou pensed I was merely playing make-believe? Would I were a fool and scoff at the threat of thy knife piercing through my heart. And yet I believed you were a fiend characterized doth by his cutting.
I fucking cannot stand theater kids!
Oh, farewell, my friend.
If I may be so bold as to call you that someday.
The stars have aligned a change for you.
A shift in thine energy. There will be good in you yet. And when that light doth shine, I shall see you in the fog.
What the fuck is wrong with me?